guys, this episode we're going to be talking about how to build real-time nested comments with Hotwire and Turbo.js. Now we've talked about this in the past where we built nested comments, and we're going to be building something similar to that, but we are building a real-time version of that to take advantage of some of the Turbo functionality in Hotwire. So I've got a Rails app with a post scaffold, and we've already installed Hotwire and set up Devise and Bootstrap, and so we can dive into building comments now. So we are going to start by creating the comment model in our terminal. So we'll generate a model called comment, and it's going to have a user belongs to on it, so we know who created the comment. We'll have a commentable belongs to that is polymorphic, so we can use these comments for any model that we want to associate with, and we'll have our body as rich text. And then actually let's add a parent ID integer so that we can have comments that know their parent. Now we could use the commentable as the reference to the parent comments, but by doing this we can have them all associated with the post, and that will make it easy to delete all the comments whenever we delete a post, and we can just use the parent ID for rendering out visually the children. So let's run this and generate that model. I've already done that, so we're going to run Rails DB migrate to create that in our database, and then we can hop to our code in the post show action. Now this is the default show action, but I've added a section here for comments, and I just said let's go ahead and give you a link whenever you're not signed in. And if you are signed in, then we can add a form for the comments. So let's render out a partial called comments form, and we will have some locals here. We will have the comment itself, which will be a new comment, and then we need a commentable, which will be our post. So that's where the comment will be posted to. The commentable, which is posts /1/comments, and we'll need a form for that and matching routes. So we can hop into our routes and add a nested resource under posts, and we'll call that comments, and we'll say module posts, and that will allow us to define a scoped controller for this. So we'll say posts /comments controller.rb, and inside of there we can define the posts comments controller. Now this controller will be one that we want to be somewhat reusable, so if we add another model like an episode or a video and we want comments on those, we're going to make a nested controller for those comments as well, but most of the logic is actually going to be in a shared either parent controller or module like a concern that implements the actions like create and so on. So what these will do is just run a before action to set the commentable, and that is going to look up the commentable. So in this case, we will have at commentable equals post.find params ID, and we will set that, and we'll be able to write the rest of the controller logic inside of either a parent controller or a concern. And I'm going to add a concern here. So we're going to have a commentable.rb concern, and this will be module commentable, and we will extend active support concern. We'll have an included block where it can do anything we want, like before action, authenticate user, the stuff that you put on the class level, and then we can define our create and any other actions we might want to have in here. So that's going to take care of this. We'll be able to go fill this out next, but our comments controller will just need to include commentable, and it will set up the before actions from commentable and the before action for set commentable. Okay, so let's go into our models and make sure we have our associations. We want has many comments as commentable on our post, and our user model should have many comments as well, but it's going to be the user association, so that is all good. Now we can go into our app views folder and add our comments form.html.erb, and inside of comments form we are going to have a form with a model. This is going to be our commentable that we passed in as an argument from our view. So let me pull that up real fast. Our post show renders this partial with the comment and the commentable as post. So if we say model is commentable and that being a post, then this is going to generate a form with an action of /post/1/comments. And anytime commentable changes to say let's say it's a videos model, then it would just change to that and post to a different route. So that's good. And we can go and create our little form here. We can say, let's do a form rich text area for the body. And then let's have a form submit button. And let's make this class button primary. And we probably want to print out any form object errors. So we'll say form.object.errors.any. We'll have a div. We'll go through those form object errors. Full messages, each do message. And each one of these will just get printed out in a div. So we can see the message on its own line. So if we hop over to our commentable concern again, we can fill out the create action. So this is going to be simple. We will say @comment equals @commentable, which is already set with the before action. Say .comments.new comment params. We will define comment params, which is the params require comment, and permit the body and the parent ID. And we'll make that private, and we will attempt to save the comment. If that is successful, we want to redirect to the commentable. And if it's not, we want to have a way to replace the form. Now we're using Hotwire and Turbo.js, so this form is going to be submitted, and we can replace just that form with the errors if something goes wrong. So let's go, instead of doing this, we'll say respond to do format, and we'll nest this inside of that block. So here we can say format.turbostream. We'll do one thing, and format.html, we can do another thing. So if this wasn't submitted by Turbo for whatever reason, we could have this redirect to the commentable, and you could say a notice or something that it was successfully saved. But in our case, we want to render out, on errors, we want to render out a replacement for that form. So if we render out a new post and take a look at the comment form, we will see here, if we inspect, that our form does not have an ID. And we need an ID for the Turbo stream to actually go and find it and replace it. So we need to go and update our comment form partial to include some sort of ID so we can target it. So we can add a new line here, and we can say ID and give it some string, like new comment, if we wanted to do something simple. But what we're going to do is actually define a helper method, and this is going to allow us to target this specific form. And that's going to be important later on, because once we get into nested comments, we'll be able to target an individual form, even though we might have this rendered on the page 10 different times. So let's do that. What we really want is something like DOM ID comment, but we want to be able to also specify a different object in there as well, and kind of concatenate all of those together. So what we'll do is we will build our own DOM ID for records, and you can pass in the commentable and the comment, and it's going to figure out how to handle that. So let's go create app helpers. We'll call it record helper.rb, and inside here we define our module record helper and a DOM ID for records, and we can take the records and a prefix, because that's the option that DOM ID has. We can go through records.map, do record. We'll do the DOM ID for the record with the prefix being prefix. And once that's all mapped, we can join this together with, say, an underscore. So that's going to be able to combine the DOM IDs together for us so that our comment form can have a combined ID. And so that's going to be really useful for us to target those very specific forms later on when we have multiple on the page. Because if we had all of them called ID is new comment, well, it'd be redundant. IDs are supposed to only be on the page a single time, and this allows us to solve that problem. So now we can use this DOM ID for records helper inside of here, and we can include the action view, record identifier, and the record helper we just defined, and use that to do our turbo stream inside of here. So what we'll do is we'll say turbo stream.replace DOM ID for records at commentable, and we will have our comment dot or at comment, and that's going to be a new comment. So because it's on the validation errors part of the else, and then we can just render that same partial. So we say partial comment slash form locals is comment, and commentable is at commentable. And if that's all done correctly, we don't need that last curly brace there. What we should be able to do is if we go into our comment model and say validates body presence is true, we should see that this controller will fire. It will then go into the else, it will run the turbo stream, and it will replace that form on the page with the errors. So let's click create and see if that works. Now I made a typo and authenticate user, so we see that being an error. So let's create now, and we get post without an ID. Now I wrote this as in our comments controller as params ID. That should be params post ID because we're in a nested controller this time. Let's try this one more time. And there we go. We get user must exist, body can't be blank. And that first one is something we should do here. We should say current comment.user equals current user to always assign that user. The other thing we should do is go into here and give this div class alert danger in order to make it look a little prettier. There we go. So now we have this form actually being targeted by that, and it is automatically handling that case of replacing that form with errors. So our commentable is well on its way. Now on success, we need a format.html where we redirect, same as the one below, and we can pretty much do the same thing here, except now our comment is saved. And so we need to actually take the comment and use a different DOM ID for records in order to reference a brand new comment. So we want to replace that on the page with a new form. And by doing that, we can say, use a local variable for a new comment. And that's going to re-render that form out. And so now if we were to submit a successful comment, our form is cleared out, replaced with a new copy, but we don't see our comments. And that's for a couple reasons. For one, we're not rendering our comments. So if we go to post show, we should actually go down here and render at comments, at post.comments. And that's going to give us our comments to render. That's going to render a comments comment.html.erb. And inside of here, we can define a turbo frame tag for the comment, and then render our body inside of here. So comment.body, we can put a div up at the top that says, let's do the split. So we'll say deflex, justify content between and we'll print out the comment.user.name. And then on the other side, we will include links to edit. So edit comment path for the comment. And let's do a class of mr2 on the side so that we can separate that from a button to delete, which will be to the comment path for the comment. This should be not an instance variable. This will be method delete and a data confirm of are you sure? So this gets us the representation of the comments down here at the bottom. Turbo frame tag. We'll fix that. And we don't have our edit comment path yet, so let's go ahead and add that up here. Resources comments, and allow us to just render that out. Now, we need, of course, some way of rendering this out so that it is aligned properly. So let me fix this /div that's missing there, and then all of a sudden it starts to look a lot better. So that's much better. We have our name and our links, and we can even say this should be class dflex in order to get these to line on the sides. We could even go through and add HRs or something to separate them, but we're going to wait on that because we're going to be doing nested comments. So this is getting us well on the way, but one of the things I would love to be able to do is see that these comments are rendered automatically. So let's go ahead and delete these out of the database. So we'll say comment.destroy all. To clear those out, we'll be able to refresh our page. And if we go to our post show, we can add something right here above the comments that is a turbo stream from at post comments. And now we will have our JavaScript connect to the post comments channel. And anytime we broadcast a comment to that, it will go to our JavaScript and execute that operation, whatever we want it to be, which means we can go into our models comment.rb and broadcast to the post. So let's go and do this in a little bit different of a manner than you might be used to. If we say after create commit, we can specify a lambda to run, and that's going to be a broadcast append to, or append later to if you want to do that in a background job, which I would recommend. Then we can broadcast this to commentable comments, which is the same thing as our turbo stream from that we added to the page. And so if you look at your page and you inspect down here by the comments, you'll see the turbo stream from. That is a signed ID, so it can't be tampered with, but that will match the same thing that this will broadcast to. So then from here, we want to set a target, and we're not going to use the default target, and that's why we're adding this. We're adding the DOM ID of the commentable, and in order to use that in our model, we need to include action view record identifier. So we can call DOM ID from here. You can also call action view record identifier .dom ID, but it's a little long. And then we're going to add underscore comments to match the name of our stream. And this is the DOM ID that we're going to have on the page where all of our comments will live. Okay, so this is now going to match up with post show, and around our comments we want to render a tag with the ID of the DOM ID at post, and we want comments as well. So we're going to make these match underscore comments, and we'll wrap that in the div tag. So now if we refresh our page and inspect just beneath this button, we'll see post one underscore comments. That is going to match the target here. And then our stream from post comments is what we match here when we broadcast. So now if we open up this page in a couple of our browser windows, we can type in here, create our comment, and we'll see it gets broadcast and appended to all of our open browsers that are looking at this page. So that is a great step in the right direction. And the next piece we need to do is do editing and deletions in line. And then we'll be able to go in further and broadcast those update steps. We can do the editing form in just the single browser and get on to our nested comments. So thanks for watching part 1 of the real-time nested comments series. I will be back in the next one, and I'll talk to you then. Peace.